Hello beloveds, my name is Evonne from Embody Mother and welcome to the cycle report for the 14th of April 2019. I come to you today from Gubbi Gubbi country on the Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia and the Southern Hemisphere. This is the last report I'll do from Gubbi Gubbi country, and I want to honour and acknowledge the traditional custodians, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and I feel absolutely honoured to be sitting on this land. It is just pristinely beautiful. So here we are actually in between Autumn Equinox, which was on the 21st of March, and the Samhain or Halloween, which here in the Southern Hemisphere falls traditionally on April the 30th. And the exact midway point between the equinox and the winter solstice is the 6th of May this year. That's an astrological date. And this would be the last report that I do on autumn equinox. After this, we will really start to honour the deep descent of the deep harvest, which is all about the death and the dying and the crones and the wise women and the wise men as we really descend into this, point of darkness. So when I sat on this land and, felt into the vibration or what autumn equinox means here. Remember, this is a map, not the terrain, so it's different for everywhere, but there is a certain vibe about it, and it really sang home to me. The water was a really, really important part. The average rainfall here in sort of March, April is about 177 millimeters, which is phenomenal. So I've really been taking in the water because the where I come from, Jojo country down in central Victoria, it's really dry and cold, and so it's interesting to feel that contrast. So the water has been such a really strong element, and it's really, really interesting because in a lot of traditional cultures, water is associated with the direction of the west. And west, if you look on the wheel, west is associated with autumn equinox, the Marga, and that time of day of 6 o'clock in the evening as we move down into the darkness. And so it was really interesting to read and do some research on water. And water, according to Christina Pratt, who has an awesome podcast, and I'll put the links down below for the Why Shamanism Now podcast, speaks about water being the great shapeshifter and how it transforms from a gas to a solid to a liquid. And it's in a constant state of flow. And if it's not in a constant state of flow, it becomes stagnant and it does not support life. And water is like this deep restorative restoration, reconciliation element. And water also represents our emotional bodies, so if we develop our relationship with our emotional bodies, we can fully step into developing a relationship with water, which is really, really important because what's happening at the moment, the waterways are getting plugged with pollution. I mean, already just finding a spot to do this report, I've just picked up rubbish on the beach that's just waiting to be swept out to our oceans. There's governments, our government in particular here in Australia has just, I don't even have words for it. I'm just feeling deep grief over, giving, unlimited water rights to a coal mining company on our most pristine, the Great Barrier Reef. It's just no words. It really shows up that, us as a culture that's still really driven in that patriarchal industrial culture, and that disregard for the elements that disconnect from a relationship with, our environment and the world around us, really represents our emotional body. And how, which is interesting, right? So the patriarchal industrial culture does not want us to feel our emotional body. So we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of our culture trying to cut off our bodies. So we keep in the head and not in the bodies, because if we, it does not serve that industrial patriarchal culture, because if we were in our bodies, that need to work and that need to, that monotonous sort of getting up, going to work, always sort of, producing, always growth, does not serve the industrial patriarchal culture. Instead of honouring the cycles of, that birth, growth, harvest, death, decay, void, instead of honouring that, our culture is really honing in on that, that 21-year-old, ready, sexualized, fertility, but that point on the wheel, which is always about, that material. What can I pull in? What can I, earn to buy the new television? Earn to buy the new car, earn to buy the biggest house. And it's interesting that Bill Plumpton, who's a psychologist and a wilderness amazing man who from America, in his book Nature and the Human Soul, talks about that we have diminished our relationship to more than human, so elements, earth, water, air, we have diminished our relationship with it to a mere sort of, almost degraded it so much that it seemed like as a hippie concept to actually acknowledge the more than human, acknowledge water as an entity that serves us, and so with that we've kept our culture in this sort of child adolescent phase of feeling, not feeling our bodies, not the immature emotional body. So to really step into what means to be fully human, a full-fledged adult, we need to step into our relationship with our emotional body. We need to connect, feel, and we need to connect to the elements. We're actually in a crisis at the moment, our planet, because we are so cut off and so in the head that we cannot even relate to, the elements, and leaving rubbish on the, on the earth, ready to be swept out the sea. It doesn't even make sense to me. Like, it does, but it's like we need to grow up as a culture. And how we do that is by starting to connect to ourselves. And at first, it may seem really, really daunting because there's so much grief and there's so much pain. But you can't have one without the other. You can't expect to be happy and live a good life without acknowledging, the rest of yourself. You can't really step into it and say, yeah, I really want happiness, without the contrast. So people just, that means that's when suppression happens, and that's when things like illness, like cancers and things like that, we need to grow up as a culture. And, one way we can do that too is like honouring the water. Honouring, we are so lucky in our Western culture that we have water that comes from our tap, straight to our house, and drinking and feeling the water inside our bodies, and coming to places like this and really, giving thanks and feeling the waves and, just feeling how it feels in our body, just to feel the water around us and feel the earth under our feet and feel the wind touch, our skin. It's just to tune in to more than human. Yeah. I think that's it, what I need to say about that. It's a really big thing. We need to, one last thing actually about this and Christina Pratt talks about this in her podcast, is, you know, we need to, as a culture and as individuals as well, is to ask the question, are we ready to see what we're fully made of? Are we ready to step out of the baby's pool and swim to the dark, deep ocean or the deep water and see what we're made of? To see if we can swim. Yeah? You know, it's like the mermaids that are afraid of the shallows but really ravish in the deep emotional body. You know, that's a really good question. Are you ready to step out of the shadows and see if you can swim? And see what you're really made of. And that will need for you to look at what lies deep within. Because otherwise, our culture as a whole will continue in this child-adolescent state and not actually step into being a fully fledged adult culture. So, with the moon phase, we are, yesterday, so Saturday was first quarter moon, so it's all about seeing the sprouts just coming up. So we've had this new moon with the seeds that we've sort of planted in early intentions, and we're just seeing the starts of the sprouting of those seeds, which is really interesting that we're talking about this, because I feel that this is a part of mine, and looking at those deep emotional bodies. And then on Friday, this coming Friday, we step into a full moon. So it's a really good time this week to really think about what you want to bring up to bring into fullness. So full moon prayers on Thursday would be a really, really good time to do it. What do you want to call in to have full illumination? And I am personally on day 14 this week, so today, so I'm really stepping into that fullness and ovulation. So, you know, really putting out there as to, you know, seeing the seeds come into fullness of what I've been planting this menstrual cycle. So the red 10 questions and the reflective questions are: what is your relationship with water? And how can you develop a personal ritual or honouring every day to develop your relationship with water? Because like any relationship, it needs time. Like the great lovers, you know, lovers don't jump in straight away. It takes, you know, it takes time to develop that relationship. And with ourselves as well. So if we were to reflect on our water element within ourselves, our emotions, you know, sometimes it really takes time, and to be really gentle with ourselves. But the idea is to just start paddling. Just start paddling out to the deep and just see what it is, what lays there. And to follow on with that, my offerings. So I'm really, really excited actually, because I'm about to, and I'm going to actually announce it now, I might as well, that I am now taking bookings. It's very exciting for deep soul journeying. So deep soul journeying, which will be it's a half an hour free meet greet if we gel, or this is the right path for you. And then it's a 3 moon cycle intensive each week, an hour and a half call or Skype or in person, to journey around, so mapping your wheel and your terrain in the wheel. So we start off with birth stories, and then we move into ancestral stories. We go into how we create things, our menarch stories. We travel around, and then coming into, you know, what is your superpower, and stepping into your power, and what does that feel like to do that. So we work through this for 3 moon cycles. And for this special offering, because it's new, we have, it's 1,600, which is cash up front, or a payment plan of 1,800, which is a huge discount from the 3,000, which is probably what it's actually worth. So that will last for a couple of months. So if you're interested, there's my email down the bottom of this click on that and shoot me an email and I'll give you some more details. So I'm enjoying soaking up the rest of this beautifulness of pristine beaches. Well, maybe not so much pristine. And I'll head home tomorrow back to Wurrung country, preparing for really the deep descent, which, you know, being south of the country of Australia is dark and cold. So from my heart to your heart, wherever you are, I sincerely hope that you're feeling deeply held and deeply loved, and that you do start developing, and if you haven't already, start developing a relationship with the more than human, acknowledging the power and the beautiful, you know, just love that more than human can give us. So much love. Bye.